In the turbulent 13th century, Scotland was a land of conflict, fighting against the oppressive yoke of English rule. Born around 1270, William Wallace emerged from this unrest as a fierce warrior and a symbol of freedom. The exact details of Wallace's early life remain debated, but it's widely believed that he was born into a family of minor nobility in Elderslie, Renfrewshire. His father, Sir Malcolm Wallace, was a knight and landowner, while his mother, Margaret, was a strong and influential figure in his upbringing. Wallace grew up in a time of political instability. In 1286, Scotland's King Alexander III died suddenly, leaving a power vacuum that was exploited by Edward I of England. Edward's intervention in the Scottish succession crisis intensified tensions and fueled resentment, especially as he attempted to control Scottish affairs. Wallace was raised with a deep sense of justice, and his education included combat training, with particular skill in using the longbow and sword. His imposing stature, standing at 6 feet 7 inches, made him a formidable presence in battle. Influenced by the stories of his ancestors who had fought for Scottish freedom, Wallace grew to embody the same fierce spirit. The death of Wallace's father and the increasing English oppression led to a pivotal moment in his life. The English invasion of Scotland in 1296, part of the First War of Scottish Independence, marked the beginning of Wallace's transformation into a national hero. Wallace's first acts of defiance came in the form of an altercation with English soldiers in Lanark, where he killed an English sheriff in retaliation for the brutal execution of his wife, Marion Braidfoot. This act of rebellion would spark a fire that would burn throughout Scotland. William Wallace's rebellion against English rule began with a singular act of vengeance. In 1297, Wallace avenged the death of his wife Marion Braidfoot, who had been executed by the English for helping fugitive Scots. Wallace's grief and thirst for justice led him to assassinate the notorious English sheriff William Heselrig in Lanark. This killing ignited a spark that spread across Scotland, rallying many Scots to join Wallace's cause. His act was seen as a powerful statement of defiance, symbolizing that the English could no longer rule without consequence. Wallace's popularity grew, and soon he was leading a growing army against English forces. Wallace's rebellion focused on guerrilla tactics, striking English supply lines and launching ambush strategies that proved highly effective against the larger, better equipped English army. Wallace's leadership and daring acts inspired many to join his fight for freedom. However, his victory came at a steep price. His actions drew the wrath of Edward I, who sent a large force to capture him and crush the rebellion. Despite the looming threat of English retaliation, Wallace's forces achieved a stunning victory at the Battle of Stirling Bridge on September 11, 1297. Using his deep knowledge of the terrain, Wallace managed to turn the English forces' superior numbers against them. The narrow bridge and the Scottish ambush led to a decisive victory for Wallace and his men, boosting Scottish morale and making Wallace a national hero. However, the victory also attracted the English king's attention, setting the stage for a relentless pursuit to capture Wallace. William Wallace's military prowess was one of the key factors behind his success as a leader. His ability to adapt to the ever-changing landscape of war allowed him to continue his resistance against the English despite the overwhelming odds. Wallace's understanding of the Scottish terrain, his skill in guerrilla warfare, and his ability to rally Scots to his cause made him a formidable opponent. After his victory at Stirling Bridge, Wallace's forces continued to harry English troops, using ambush and hit-and-run tactics. His knowledge of the land allowed him to stay one step ahead of the English, even when outnumbered. Despite a devastating defeat at the Battle of Falkirk in 1298, Wallace's resilience never wavered. Though he was forced to step down as Guardian of Scotland, his leadership inspired a generation of Scots to continue the fight for independence. The Battle of Stirling Bridge, fought on September 11, 1297, stands as one of the greatest examples of Wallace's military genius. Faced with a much larger English army, Wallace capitalized on the terrain. The English forces, led by Sir Hugh de Cressingham and John de Warenne, were confident in their numbers and cavalry. However, Wallace had strategically chosen to fight on the narrow Stirling Bridge, which limited the English cavalry's mobility and allowed Wallace's forces to exploit their vulnerability. As the English began crossing the bridge, Wallace's forces launched a devastating attack, overwhelming the disorganized English soldiers. The narrow confines of the bridge prevented the English from regrouping, and many soldiers were either cut down or drowned in the river. The Scots fought with unmatched ferocity, spurred by their leaders' unyielding spirit. This victory, which had been won against the odds, sent shockwaves through England and Scotland. Wallace's reputation as a cunning strategist and fearless leader was solidified, and his victory at Stirling Bridge marked a turning point in the First War of Scottish Independence. The Declaration of Arbroath, signed in 1320, remains one of Scotland's most important historical documents. It not only declared Scotland's independence from England, but also recognized William Wallace as a guardian of Scottish freedom. Written during the peak of the First War of Scottish Independence, the Declaration was a powerful plea for the Scottish people's right to govern themselves without interference from England. Wallace's legacy was immortalized in the Declaration, which referred to him as a symbol of defiance against English tyranny. The Declaration's emphasis on the sovereignty of the Scottish people and their right to choose their rulers laid the foundation for future democratic movements. The Declaration of Arbroath's eloquent call for freedom resonated beyond the borders of Scotland, influencing later documents like the American Declaration of Independence. Despite his numerous successes on the battlefield, William Wallace's life would ultimately take a tragic turn when he was betrayed by someone he trusted. In the summer of 1305, Wallace, who had been living a fugitive's life for several years, was captured by the English. His capture was the result of the treachery of Sir John Menteith, a Scottish nobleman who had once been an ally of Wallace. The reasons behind Menteith's betrayal remain a subject of speculation, but it is widely believed that he betrayed Wallace in exchange for English favor and promises of land and titles. On August 3, 1305, Wallace was ambushed by Menteith's forces at Rob Royston, near Glasgow. Despite putting up a fierce fight, Wallace and his small band of followers were overpowered and captured. His sword, a symbol of his fierce resistance, was confiscated, and his legendary status as the hero of Scotland came to an abrupt end. He was bound, chained, and transported to London, where he was paraded through the streets as a public spectacle. The humiliation was part of the English strategy to break the spirit of the Scottish people and send a message to anyone who dared to rise up against the crown. Once in London, Wallace was subjected to a show trial. He was charged with treason and accused of waging war against the English crown. Wallace denied the charges, stating that he could not be a traitor to Edward I, as he never swore allegiance to the English king. His passionate defense of his actions, declaring, "I cannot be a traitor, for I owe him no allegiance," was a defiant refusal to acknowledge English rule. However, betrayal was a political maneuver, and the outcome was inevitable. Wallace was found guilty, not based on evidence, but because the English crown was determined to make an example of him. The trial's outcome was influenced by Edward I's desire to crush any hope of further rebellion. Wallace was sentenced to a gruesome and public execution, designed to strike fear into the hearts of those who still dared to fight for Scotland's independence. His trial, steeped in political motivation, was an example of how the English sought to break the will of the Scots. Despite the overwhelming odds and the unjust trial, Wallace's refusal to bend to English authority became an iconic symbol of defiance and resistance. William Wallace's execution on August 23, 1305, was one of the most brutal and public acts of retribution ever carried out by the English against a Scottish hero. Wallace, now broken but still defiant, was subjected to the horrifying punishment of being hanged, drawn and quartered, one of the most brutal forms of execution in medieval England. This punishment was meant to be a public spectacle, a clear warning to anyone who might think of challenging the authority of the English crown. Wallace was dragged through the streets of London, bound to a wooden frame known as the hurdle, a grim procession that led to the execution site at Smithfield. The crowd, though gathered in anticipation of Wallace's death, would have been filled with a mix of jeers, curiosity, and fear. The once mighty warrior who had led the Scots to battle now found himself at the mercy of the English crown, his final journey marked by humiliation and pain. When he reached the execution site, Wallace was subjected to the first stage of the torture, hanging by the neck until he was nearly dead, but not quite. Just before his life was snuffed out, he was cut down, ensuring he endured every agonizing moment. Next came the drawing. Wallace's body was tied to a wooden frame and drawn along the ground, causing excruciating pain and damage to his limbs and body. But even this wasn't the end. The final part of the punishment, the quartering, was the most horrific of all. Wallace's body was mutilated, his internal organs removed, and his limbs severed. His dismembered body was displayed across the land, his head was placed on a spike on London Bridge, while his limbs were sent to different parts of England as a gruesome reminder to all who would defy the English crown. The horror of Wallace's death served its intended purpose. It struck fear into the hearts of the Scottish people and quelled many who might have considered further rebellion. However, despite the brutal execution, Wallace's spirit could not be extinguished. His death did not break the resolve of the Scottish people, but rather it solidified his place as a martyr for Scottish independence. His name would live on, etched in the hearts of the Scottish people and in the annals of history. Wallace's legacy as a freedom fighter, a symbol of defiance, and a hero for the oppressed would continue to inspire future generations. The enduring legacy of William Wallace transcends his tragic death. Over the centuries, his memory has been woven into the fabric of Scottish culture and identity. Wallace's life and sacrifice became a symbol of the struggle for freedom and justice, and his name would inspire not just the people of his time, but generations to come. His story has been immortalized in various forms, including literature, art, and modern-day political movements. One of the most significant symbols of Wallace's enduring legacy is the National Wallace Monument in Stirling, Scotland. Standing at 220 feet tall, the monument serves as a powerful tribute to the man who fought for Scotland's freedom. Visitors to the monument can ascend 246 steps to reach the top, where they are rewarded with panoramic views of the land Wallace fought to protect. Inside the monument, visitors can view a treasure trove of artifacts from Wallace's time, including the legendary Wallace sword, a massive weapon believed to have been wielded by the man himself. The sword, a symbol of Scottish pride, is one of the most significant relics on display, linking the present to the past and connecting the people of Scotland to their heroic history. Beyond the monument, Wallace's story continues to inspire the Scottish people. His name is invoked in political discourse, especially in movements advocating for greater autonomy or independence. Wallace's fight for freedom and justice has been symbolically linked to modern efforts to secure Scotland's self-determination. His story has also influenced the world of art and culture, where his image has been immortalized in countless paintings, sculptures, and literary works. The 15th century epic poem The Wallace by the blind poet Harry captures the legend of Wallace, immortalizing his deeds and sacrifices for freedom. The powerful imagery of Wallace has also made its way into modern cinema. Mel Gibson's Braveheart brought Wallace's story to the global stage, introducing a new generation to the Scottish hero. While the film took liberties with historical accuracy, it nevertheless succeeded in rekindling Wallace's status as a symbol of resistance and pride for the Scottish people. The emotional portrayal of Wallace's fight for freedom and his tragic end resonated deeply with audiences, further cementing his place as one of history's most enduring figures. William Wallace's influence is not just confined to the past, however. He continues to be a source of inspiration for political movements in Scotland. His legacy has been invoked by politicians advocating for Scottish independence, drawing parallels between his fight for freedom and the ongoing struggle for self-determination in modern times. Wallace's spirit has become synonymous with the Scottish people's unbreakable resolve to stand up for their rights and maintain their identity. In modern-day Scotland, Wallace's memory is honored through annual events such as Wallace Day, which commemorates his life and legacy. This day serves as both a tribute to Wallace's bravery and a reminder of the ongoing struggle for freedom. Wallace's story continues to inspire Scots to this day, reminding them of the sacrifices made in the pursuit of independence and the relentless spirit of their national hero. Through these many forms, monuments, literature, film, and political discourse, William Wallace's legacy lives on, a symbol of defiance, courage, and the eternal struggle for freedom. His name, immortalized in Scottish culture, remains as a beacon of hope and a rallying cry for those who continue the fight for justice and independence.